Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Together We Rise, part 2 of a 4-part series with the Northwest Event Show. Today we have some amazing speakers that are going to chat with you. I am Kate Patay, CPCE, the chairwoman of the Search Foundation. I just want to welcome everyone, let you know how appreciative we are of all of your support and for getting up and joining us today. I'm really excited to hear this panel. I do want to give a shout out to a few of our sponsors before we get started with all of this, because we all know that none of this is possible without generous donors and sponsors every single time. So you guys, if you have a chance, make sure you check out Red Element Studios. They did the promotional video for us. Project Bionic. Our media partners are 425 Business and South Sound Magazine. And then Evo 3 Marketing. This one's pretty awesome. If you haven't yet seen these, they have these great co-branded mugs. If you do a minimum donation of $50 to the Search Foundation, you can get one of those sent to you as well. All you have to do is text NWES to 44321, and they'll send you one of those awesome mugs. We also want to thank Elenos for sending all of the speakers some amazing yogurt this morning to get them all started on a high note. I love that side of it. For Search Foundation, for those that aren't familiar, Search is a 501c3 for event individuals. It's for event pros, by event pros. It's for anyone that's in crisis. So whether that is COVID, it's cancer, if you're in a car accident, the wildfires that we all see happening, or hurricanes coming through, you can apply for crisis relief funds through the Search Foundation. So I encourage you to check it out. If you're able to support it, again, you can text NWES to 44321. A minimum donation of $50 gets you this amazing mug that you'll see all of the speakers using today throughout the show and on our next ones. Or visit searchfoundation.org. If you do know someone that's in need, feel free to share the information with them so that we can continue to assist individuals in our industry that are in crisis. But I'm going to kick this off with some amazing speakers, and then I get to sit back and listen to all of them and hear about Together We Rise. Your moderator for today is one of my favorite ladies out there, Melissa with Compass Group at Microsoft. Melissa Jerkin, so many of you know who she is. I met her when she was still at Seafair. She's done some events that you may have heard of before when she was down in Arizona, this little thing called the Super Bowl. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that one. She did that twice, you guys. Her and I have both been in events for over 20 years. We started as toddlers, obviously. She's worked with the Special Olympics, like I said, Seafair. She's currently a strategist and does everything to make it possible to do over 30,000 events annually for Compass Group at Microsoft. She is kind, she is professional, she is funny, she is smart, and she is definitely someone you want in your corner. So please give a warm welcome to my dear friend, Melissa Jerkin.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. It is absolutely wonderful to be here and also to see and hear some familiar faces now more than ever. When we don't really get together, it's nice to at least bring everybody together here. You know, times have certainly been challenging as we go into what is now our 8th month of this global pandemic. And today we really want to spend some time reframing the conversation, if you will, to talk about some of the positive findings and observations that have come out of this, and also how we've worked together, collaborating and supporting each other, and really how we can continue to rise up as a collective. So first up, I am going to introduce our absolutely amazing panelists, and they will each tell you a little bit about themselves. So Sam Eitzen, CEO and co-founder of Snapbar and Keep Your City Smiling. Sam, good morning.
Stand by.
CEO of Snapbar, very recently the CEO of Keep Your City Smiling. We are a photo and video experience company, and most of what we had to offer clients around the country was photo booths. In March, that collapsed around myself and my team, and our big pivot was to a new business completely outside the events industry, which is Keep Your City Smiling. We started a gift box company. That went really well for 3 months, and now we are back in the saddle with our events company, Snapbar, because the Keep Your City Smiling pivot allowed us enough time to build virtual photo booth technology that we're offering. So now I get to run 2 companies because one wasn't enough.
Thank you, Sam, who I believe is the ultimate pivoter in this time. And next up, we have Marcus C. White, CMP, Managing Member and Co-Founder of MCW Events. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm so excited to be here. Hello, everyone from Palm Springs. I needed a little sun, so I escaped the doom and gloom of Seattle. I'm excited to be here. I own an event agency here in Seattle. We do a lot of events globally. Same with Sam. Everything kind of fell apart on March 23rd, was actually the day that our Governor Inslee declared that we would be locked down for 2 whole weeks. And here we are 8 months later. And, we've made a big move to all digital events. I'm almost 50 and this dog is learning new tricks. So I'm excited to be here and talk about how there is some hope and there is some silver lining in here somewhere. I know we can find it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marcus. Send some of that sun up our way, please. And next up, we have Karen Facio, Director of Marketing and Partner Operations at Microsoft. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. So I am here as someone who sponsors a lot of events and works with a lot of people who are professionals in this space. My team manages a large ecosystem of partners for Microsoft who are tech makers, tech providers. We do a lot of tech events. And we also had to do a hard pivot from things that were typically in person. We've had some pretty large tier 1 level events, global events that had to take a hard pivot, like many of us. And so I'm anxious to sort of, share some of the learnings that we've had from that and certainly learn from this fabulous panel on best practices and I'd say hard-earned experience going through some of the changes that we've all had to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Karen. And last, our fantastic panelist, Lynn Stout, Founder and Creative Director of Bond Events and the Live Events Coalition. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Lynn Stout. I run Bond Events, which is actually based in Washington, D.C., but we work internationally. We work in Seattle a few times a year. I also do venues, one in San Francisco. So I think the Live Events Coalition sort of recommended me because they knew I had a little bit of a connection to the West Coast, and I'm happy to be with you guys today. Like everybody, the pandemic hit, and we actually in DC took a little bit different. We 6 rivals came together, called each other away, and said, "Oh my God, what's happening? Can we just discuss this?" And it's turned into an organization which a little bit more as we get into things, but it's been a successful collaboration. And through that, I founded the Live Events Coalition with about 6-8 other board members. And, we've historically been in behind the curtains and not seen, and being in DC and understanding kind of what we were facing, we understood that we needed out and stand up for ourselves. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about Live Events Coalition and lessons we've learned about partnering and joining forces to rise up together, because we truly are all in this together. As much as I hate that saying, we really need each other, and the groupthink has been just extremely beneficial.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. And as you can tell, all of our panelists come from a different and diverse background. So we'll be speaking from a little bit different aspect of the event industry. And before we officially get started, I do want to say again, thank you to the Northwest Event Show and our partners for these amazing mugs. Cheers, coffee break cheers to all of our panelists as we go ahead and dive in. So first, I kind of wanted to start out with, 1 second here. It has obviously, it's been a very difficult time within the industry, and we've definitely become stronger. There's been more collaboration and sharing and really lifting each other up, as Lynn alluded to here a few moments ago. Let's talk first about how the community has helped you and your business through these times.
I'd love to start if I can. I mean, I'll allude back to the 6 rival producers. I mean, we really are the 6 largest in DC, and we came together. Some of us had never even met before. We just sort of knew each other from proposal writing and things like that. So we got on that call that first day, and it's actually turned into just such a genuine friendship. I had a contract issue the other day that I called one of my rivals on and said, how can I do? And he talked me through it. And we understand there's a boundary. You know, you're not going to go after. I mean, we're still competing against each other, and it's a healthy rivalry. But at the same time, we've just really learned to trust each other and really understand that there's a safety net there for you. And you have to let go of some of those historical feelings of protectiveness and wanting to feel insular right now, because we're all really vulnerable. And it's been extremely helpful to have a group of people that understand what we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to echo that. This is Marcus. You know, what we've seen a lot happen is we've had competitive agencies in Seattle and throughout, you know, Freeman's and Opus, and we've all had conversations about how we can support each other. Because what we're finding so much of the time right now is that we have people like a housing team that is so exacting when it comes to data and whatnot. And you know, that is applicable directly to how we can support presenters getting ready to present online, understanding internet up and down speeds, understanding vMix and Zoom links, and those types of things, and to really lean into all of the skills that you have as a planner. We actually need them more than ever, because these digital events, I think I can speak for the group here, are more difficult than in-person events. There's a lot less flexibility. There's a lot more dependency on the internet and technology that a lot of us aren't super comfortable with. I read this really interesting article that said the technology for events is in the next 3 years is what we would have expected in 30. So we can imagine that this is not going to go away. And part of the silver lining, I think, here is that we're going to see the need for in-person planning, and then we're also going to see a need for the online planning, and they're going to have to be happening in conjunction at the same time. So I actually, you know, if I were to predict, I actually think that we're going to have more jobs, you know, not anytime quickly, but in the future, I actually think there's going to be more, because we're going to have to work on these multiple platforms.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the notion of the hybrid event is really here to stay.
We think
Oh
so.
yeah,
Oh,
I don't think
definitely.
it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I know, just speaking for Microsoft, I don't think we have any desire to go back to an in-person only type of experience. We've experienced just an explosion of being able to serve more. And so, you know, to the earlier point about, you know, new ways of coming together to innovate on that, to really sort of be community at the center of how we design the event experience to begin with. It's been really wonderful to see, as we've been trying to sort of pivot some of our big events into new ways of delivery, that there have been communities of teams coming together to augment our tier one experiences. We've had to pivot from events that had, you know, over 500 sessions down to 70. And so there's a lot of content on the table when you do things like that. And so we've really appreciated communities coming together and different suppliers coming together to augment those experiences and be able to sort of fill the gaps of some of that content demand and ability to bring more people together, and to connect deeper than, you know, what I would say a typical tier one event experience can do.
And Karen, maybe talk a little bit about your experience with Inspire, which I know is one of the largest conferences within Microsoft, and how it really has opened up inclusivity and accessibility through these times, and more people being able to join and participate in the events.
Yeah, that's an event that's, you know, it's a very sort of long event. Most of our ecosystem looks forward to it every year. It's a great way to connect, and that you know, being able to sort of elevate the access for that has been phenomenal. We've had people who, you know, had challenges, you know, getting access to you know, visas and all of those other things that would prevent people from being able to come to an event in a certain country or certain location. Now that's just not even an issue. So, just in terms of numbers, we went from what we typically see is about 40,000 people in a single event to now like well over 100,000 that are live, interacting in very real ways in this digital experience. So that's what I mean, that access, we have no motivation to stop that from happening. So for us, it's how can we do a combination of creating more access points, more community oriented experiences, so we can keep the intimacy while also communicating vital content. The other thing it allowed us to do was expose more voices, because there's a lot more flexibility in who you can draw into an event experience like that, from professionals in the industry, thought leaders. And so again, another form of access that allowed us to open up the frame and allowed us to also give our digital platforms over to voices that need to be heard, that are purpose aligned, brand aligned, and that's something we were able to do this year, and I definitely see us continuing to do so. The fact that we were able to bring in voices that were speaking to the times, right? The state of technology, especially when we were doing so much transition with COVID, voices that came from diverse communities. So I love where it's going, and we're very encouraged to keep going.
Great. Well, and we're kind of jumping around here a bit. We're talking now about findings that we've applied to our client events, if you will. One aspect really is the desire for human connection and shared experience more than ever. Let's talk a little bit about and continue talking about how you've done that for your clients through these virtual experiences and working remotely.
I know for us, being kind of split across two companies right now, our core team first was able to go completely outside the events industry and connect and partner with like the local Seattle community at first for Keep Your City Smiling, which was a small business gift box initiative. And on the Snapbar side, when Keep Your City Smiling bought us the time to pivot to this virtual product, we were able to start thinking about how we could create connection between our own team first, and then the brands that we were serving via the same stuff that we were doing in person, now virtual, and in a future we totally expect to be hybrid as well. And it seems silly, but so we're a photo booth company at the core, and when we would go to events historically, the biggest point, or one of the big reasons you get Snapbar is entertainment, and it was just a fun thing to do. And when we pivoted to virtual, we realized that the types of content that were being shared from people's homes with their pets, with kids in the pictures, it was just different. It legitimately, like in multiple threads and lots of conversations with clients, the words connection and engagement came up, and the words entertainment and fun used to come up more for us, even though it's basically the same product, just a different format. That for us was really encouraging, and started to help us think about engagement technology or connection technology, whatever that means for us as like a photo and video tech provider. And it was exciting because working on connection and engagement was a little bit more inspiring at the end of the day than just fun, like fun photos. There's nothing wrong with that, but we like, and we were really encouraged to see teams sharing content that was taken in a virtual photo booth setting with each other and laughing and having fun, because it wasn't happening in person like it used to anymore.
Exactly.
And we
go ahead.
I was going to say, we at the end of April came together and put on our own gala. We literally threw a gala for ourselves to show our client. Initially, it was intended to show our clients how it could be done and how it could be fun. It turned into a community gala, and we ended up raising $12,000 for a local food organization. But everybody and their brother wanted to participate and show how the virtual events could be entertaining, and you could have shared experiences in this community. And it was invaluable for our business and being able to pivot, because, people had their first fun experience, and from there, sort of the doors opened up.
Totally. And I couldn't agree more with everyone on this panel. What Lynn talked about with the shared experience, Karen with that content, and then Sam with that connection is that, a friend of mine coined this, but she said, what we're doing now is edutaining people, right? It's understanding how that content is delivered. It's not going to be a 45-minute session that you would do normally, but maybe it's, a 20-minute session where you're having a conversation with someone. I don't know if you've all seen where people eat, the spicy chicken wings and it keeps getting spicier, but they're having this conversation and this connection. You're doing the same thing. It's giving information, it's getting it out, but you're doing it in a way that is more like a television broadcast in a sense that, you have this one-way delivery, but you're also having things like polling and you're doing all of these things. So I love that everyone's brought a piece of this and you just add it all up together and it's just this different product that's doing the same thing. So again, like I want to mention to so many is that, your jobs are exactly what they should be. And we're so good at getting people to do things, get to the airport on time, get your registration on time, that you're doing the same thing.
Well, Karen mentioned when we had our first sync call that she was calling this the writer's room now. I believe it was Karen that mentioned the writer's room. And we had been doing that, but I didn't have a term for it. And now I have a term for it. So thank you, Karen. And we've, you really have to think of it like you're writing a script for a television show and really script your TV show. But it's a great term and it's a great way to think of it. Like you think of the portal as the venue. You think of, the way you're sort of doing your run of shows as a writer's room.
Yeah, just to build on that, Lynn. So I'll have to give credit to our big corporate events team for all of that resetting, but that was pivotal for us. That we kind of move out of this typical sort of event planning environment, which has all kinds of complications and complexity. But and having that writer's room metaphor to kind of center around it allowed us to operate with so much agility. So we ended up with sort of our master producer, who sort of the orchestrator of all, and then there was everybody came into this writer's room with a not only was there community created in the writer's room environment, but you kind of flattened out the hierarchy. People were really jumping in and connecting and reaching across, and that includes all the suppliers who were involved, all the content owners, all the executives that had to sort of be a part of this ecosystem to produce these big events, and it was an important change in language. It really was important to kind of reset the mindset. So I hope it could be a practice for more people to think about, because it was necessary for us to be able to move with high agility and create that flattening so we could work much more seamlessly together.
Let's transition. We've talked a little bit about the learnings and how we've applied it to our client events. What about how we've come together as a community and a collective? I think, Lynn, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your work within the coalition. I know we are one kind of glaring thing that we've learned through this is that really before it, we didn't have advocacy on behalf of our industry. And despite our numbers and our economic impact, we really were not seen as a field, if you will. And I know your work with bringing everybody together has made some big strides. Let's talk about that.
It's pivotal. So, we started digging. So first of all, I was sitting on my sofa feeling really sorry for myself, and it was about 1 a.m. And I looked around and I found a change.org petition that was started by a wonderful individual named Isaac Rothwell out of Chicago. And he basically was asking the administration for support for the live events industry. And about 550,000 people signed that petition in the course of a week. And we thought, oh my goodness, there's a world out there. I was probably the 300th person to sign. And then I reached out to Isaac and got on the board and have continued work. But, we started digging and I was doing some initial press, and we couldn't get good statistics on our industry. What we found was we think that there are over 12 million of us in the live events industry when you combine us all together. We've always been siloed. We're meeting planners, we're concert promoters, we're venue operators. But when you put the whole industry as a whole, we're actually contributing more to the economy than the auto industry, the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry, industries that historically have gotten bailouts. So when we needed help and when we needed to lobby and sort of, go advocate for ourselves, we didn't have any pieces in place like all those other industries did. So we've come together, formed the Live Events Coalition to bring all of these industries together, have lots of supporting organizations that are supporting the cause and understand that our role is to advocate for our industry, both on a local, state, and national level. And try to support us the best we can. But it's been eye-opening how large we are and how little we've stood up for ourselves over the last year. I mean, we've had one of the largest growth spurts of any industry, and yet, we're completely being forgotten. And restaurant industry is out there sort of advocating successfully for themselves, especially on state and local levels. And we live event professionals are, just getting left in the weeds.
Well, thanks, Lynn. We are going to pick up in a few moments back on this conversation. We are going to take a quick break for one of our sponsor partners, and we will come back with Lynn and also open it up for Q&A. So Project Bionic is a comprehensive social media marketing agency with more than a decade of experience working with a wide range of nationally and locally recognized brands. And we're going to hear from them for a few moments. Take it away. Wonderful. Thank you, Project Bionic. And now I think what we're going to do is kind of take it to the future and rising up and sort of reimagining and reinventing. And is that how we see it? Where is the event industry going?
It's a big question. We Yeah, I have no idea, obviously, but as a team in this process of reinvention that we've been on, building now software and being an event tech company in a way, which I never thought we would get there because I don't know a line of code and struggle with email software most of the time, to just thinking about how the future of hybrid might look. And I know that there's like a group of people that don't even think that anything should be called hybrid, virtual, and live, and that events are events, and that the reason for events in the first place is human connection and engagement, learning, inspiration. And so as a very kind of small slice of the pie event service provider historically, and now still an event tech provider that's creating a very narrow field of like software or solution, we're really looking to see how we can bridge the gap as much as possible and not even create products for in-person and virtual and hybrid, but create products again that connect people, whether they are able to fly into Vegas for this conference or whether they have to miss this year because of whatever situation they're going through. And think about how teams who are historically celebrating holiday parties together might be able to celebrate apart. I think, even as companies choose to go remote for the longer term, there's not just a pivot that needs to be thought of in events, but it's a pivot in how teams get together and celebrate cool moments, which events were a huge part of in the beginning. Catering is going to be reinvented or has to be reinvented, right? Because how are you going to share a meal as a team of 15 people that's not in the same room, but that sharing a meal is still a really cool and an important experience. So as a team, we're trying to think in when you think about the future, we're trying to stick to the root of why events happen in the first place and building for that, no matter no matter what the platform or technology is going to be in the future. I think people will still want to get together because they have been for thousands of years, and we're focusing on those kind of, I don't know, inherent desires of human connection as we build, because everything else is almost impossible to predict. That feels like the most solid foundation we can build on, if that makes sense.
Right. And Marcus, I believe it was you that talked about the concept of miniaturized events.
I don't. What's that? Well, I'll certainly talk about it. I love where this is going, because as I was cleaning up my office to move to Palm Springs for a year, one of the interesting things that I came across was I found like a checkbook. I found all these photos, and I realized these are technologies that I could never imagine a checkbook would go away. I could never imagine going through photos would change. And I was sitting there on my floor, like lamenting, like, what am I doing? And had this moment of like an aha moment to say, everything changes, even if I never thought it would. And I think that that's happening for us right now. We're in the midst of this change. And it's a great question and a big question of where these are going. And these miniaturized events, I agree that the one thread that I'm seeing today is that idea of a human connection. And that is what we want so bad. I think it is inherent. And talking about these mini events, where you're maybe having these different experiences, and I'll take one really quick, would be a keynote address. You go into a stadium in Vegas, there's 15,000 people. You're really looking up at a screen of the speaker is tiny. And I think that Karen said, you have this ability to be so close, like you're seeing my face, you're seeing what my tie looks like, and you're having this. But one thing you could do as we start to open up is have these regionalized events where you get to watch the keynote together, where maybe there's 10 people that are watching the keynote together, and they're talking during the keynote, like, what do you think of that? Because you can't do that in a stadium, right? You'd be kind of shushed, or, there's 75, or 10,000 people in the room. You're not going to get up and move around, but you can do that via, virtually, or you could even do it in person. And I think that's where some of these opportunities to reconnect, but still be in that environment where, like Sam said, you're still solving for an event. I'd not heard that before, Sam, where you're saying, let's just keep it as an event, and then the vehicle is hybrid, or the vehicle is digital, or the vehicle's in person.
I think it's also important to remember that our skill set is still valuable in a virtual world. I think people forget, and especially planners get so caught in the weeds about what the platform is going to be and what the tech is. But what we're great at, our skill set is still valuable. It's how to communicate. It's, do you look good in the show? The exact same thing in a ballroom when we were coaching somebody in front of a podium. We're just have a screen separating us now. So we just have to shift our mindset a little bit, but how we think about it. But we're still incredibly valuable. And I mean, the hybrid and the virtual is not going anywhere. We just raised $164,000 2 days ago on a Zoom call. That piece of fundraising is not going anywhere. So, we need to adapt and get used to it. And if you're late to the party, you're not late to the party. It's not too late. Technology is evolving daily. I mean, nobody solved the whole networking thing yet, how we properly network, do a networking cocktail party online. So whoever can crack that code is going to be the next gazillionaire, I think.
I've seen some very promising things in that space. So I'll just add to what you said, Lynn. Like that is an innovation, right? Like how do you replicate the mixer? How do you replicate, the bar, hanging out and just sort of enjoying a cocktail hour together? There's been some great innovations. I'd have to say Remo is a platform that is pretty cool in being able to do that. We've used that successfully in some of our community events, and people just love it. They love being able to bounce and meet with people and really sort of replicate that mixer experience. And then, and just in terms of, I'll just speak from the technology standpoint. At our Inspire event, we did an experimentation around interactivity. So we actually created a choose your own adventure experience inside of it. First time, big risky thing to do, with 100,000 people interacting. But that's that was really interesting, right? To have people actually be able to choose, what venue do you want to go into next? What story do you want to hear next? It does require a lot of pre-planning, right? A lot of packaging of content, a lot of getting all that stuff ready to go. But that was another way to engage the audience. And then there's a lot of telemetry that you're going to learn about, like what people choose and how they interact with that content. How much time are they spending in certain sessions? You can actually see because all of that is wired together. The other thing is, augmented reality, right? Virtual reality. We're definitely doing a lot of that when it comes to product demos and tech. I can't wait to see more of that happening, where you really do feel like you're immersive in the experience. That's a very real thing that we don't see enough of yet, but I definitely see that in the future, and not just as a unique, experience, but the modality of how you actually create a little bit more connection and that sort of first person experience in an event or any type of demo or a place where you want a little bit more interaction of the audience than just sort of passively watching.
Thanks, Karen. Let's talk a little bit more about that. In fact, we've got a question from the audience about what type of activities you do for team building. Any more examples of programming, virtual programming? We just mentioned kind of that virtual happy hour, creative ways of bringing people together in the virtual space. If we have any more examples on that?
I think Lynn's trying to talk, but she's on mute.
Uh-oh.
I was going to say there are a few decor companies in our area that have come together to create experiences. And, they're the experiences in a box that you can send out to your attendees. And then you can take 30 minutes. And we just did a campfire one the other day. And we broke into teams and had a few campfire challenges. And it was just, so some of the creative thought leaders are coming up with some interesting options. There's no one company that's kind of broken out of the pack, but I do think they're good and kind of get people out of their business mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love
I've
the
also seen a
experience.
lot of people. Oh,
go ahead, please.
Sorry, I've also seen a lot of restaurants and other companies like that. There's a bunch of them that you can start finding now where I had a client do something yesterday with a company out of Australia where they really talked about the perfect flat white. And it was this online experience that was already curated. And the great news is that, they've done this a few times now. They've been doing this since probably March as well. And so there's a lot of, look locally too. There's a lot of restaurants that are doing things like, mixing drinks or talking about craft beers or talking, doing like one here in Palm Springs that was really clever was they were doing wine pairings with cheese. And so you had to be local. You went and grabbed the $40 bag, you took it home, and then you got online and you did this shared experience together. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening around this that we can, like Sam's doing is supporting local, supporting your city. And there's a lot happening that's already, they've worked out the kinks, which is really, really great. And the price point I've found is completely accessible for companies wanting to do some of these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just sort of add that I have found that through this environment, especially since, we are literally just a screen away from each other, you can allow a lot more personalization, right? That you can create intimacy, and and so you see things like creating digital swag, right? So the kinds of like backgrounds that unify or allow people to express themselves. The sharing, gamifying the experiences so people can share a little bit more of their personal background, because those are the things that typically in an environment where you're kind of mixing, or you're in a professional setting, you're not really you're seeing the work view, right? You're seeing the professional view. But I mean, look, you're in my office right now.
Right.
You see my crazy
Yep.
bookshelf in the background, right? Like you're showing a little bit more of your personality through this environment, and the things that we can do to kind of bring that forward, encourage more of it, I think helps to increase morale, helps to sort of create that intimacy that I think people crave, especially while we're so digitally engaged now more than ever.
Yeah, it's really interesting that while we're sort of we're more separated than ever in terms of the work remote and not being able to see each other in the office or at events, we're also sort of more connected than ever in the sense that it's humanized everybody. We're in the living rooms, we're watching Instagram and seeing chefs in their kitchen, their messy kitchen with their dog or cat walking by. I think, Karen, you said it best on our touch base call about really bringing the CEO, into the home. So there is that break of that barrier.
Yeah, it's been fun watching Satya do his webcast, because he has this great shelf in the back, and we always
Yeah.
play sort of a virtual scavenger hunt of what is that one for? What is that what's the symbology of that? What is on his bookshelf, right? So that's kind of, you can also have some fun with that, right? If you want to be deliberate about your artifacts and make it a little fun about expressing your personality, your brand, but maybe even saying a little more with the things that are there, like my Ruth Bader Ginsburg candle in the back.
Aaron, we've actually got another question that's come in. As a sponsor, what do you look for? Maybe we can talk a little bit about the transition of sponsorship. What you're looking for now versus what it was like with live events. Is it
Yeah,
relationship?
yeah, I'll say that I think there's a lot here that's been expressed by the panel of the coming together. I think a lot of us, who sort of consume, resources and services, end up being a bridge maker when it comes to all of the different suppliers that we have to work with, and we usually have to put people on top of people to sort of manage all of that. It's great when that comes together. And there's already cooperation. There's already sort of a way of operating that's there, and you don't have to sort of put more people on top of people to navigate all of that stuff and make sure that things are working together. So I'm very encouraged by that. Also, that as people who are having to think about this environment very differently, where there's really not as much room for error, right? Like when you're in a live event, you might be able to kind of move things around last minute. You can throw people into a problem and kind of react to it. I know all of you are very experienced at that. We've all been through that. This is it, right? It's a live show. It's a live taping, live studio audience, no room for error, and it's captured on the internet forever. So the help being with all that contingency planning, making sure that we've got all the support systems in place to storyboard everything out, so that we can think through all the different nuances, like the skills of helping us learn from your experiences, that help us to plan for things where they might be a little tricky, but allow us to push the edge and innovate at the same time. Those things I have found really, really valuable, because a lot of us who are kind of moved into this space are having to be involved in events a little bit more than we're used to. This is all new for us, and we're relying on people to help us think about this in a very different way, while allowing us the room to focus on our content, like focus on our audience. So I'm encouraged by hearing that there's more collaboration that's happening, and hopefully we'll all be better for it.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about live events returning. And Lynn, you had an example in DC of an event that you recently hosted.
Yeah, so we just produced our first live event since March, last weekend on the National Mall. We did the National COVID Remembrance and brought in 200,000 plus chairs to represent all the lives that have been lost. And it was incredibly interesting and really exciting to be back out there. Everybody was just over the moon to be collaborating again. We found a few challenges, which were in some instances were a little bit more expensive than we had initially planned on, because crews have been let go. The companies aren't at full bore. In Washington, we're in a little bit of a bubble. I think you guys are in the tech world, and in Seattle, Northwest, are in a little bit of a bubble too. So we are seeing events, whereas the rest of the country isn't. But some of the vendor houses weren't as robust as we were used to. And so that took a little bit of getting used to. We also had our pick of the litter in terms of labor, because so many people are out of work. 55 to 70% of our labor of our industry are gig workers. We did a poll sort of with the Live Events Coalition, and without additional funding, 70% of businesses and individuals are going to be out of work by January. So, there's some pros and there's some cons. The cons are that there's some great people available out there because they're out of work. There's some cons because they're out of work. So it was incredibly interesting and really fun, but a little bit challenging as well.
We do have another question that's come in from the audience. And do you have any tips to keep attendees engaged during a 2 to 3 hour long event virtually?
Break up the content.
Yeah.
Break it. Do it in different ways. Do it in fun ways. Try different things. I'm totally gonna not say the name right, but I did one recently for, I think it was Untethered with Hub, where they asked all the presenters to do, it's called like a pakucha. So it was 20 slides, 20 seconds a slide. And so you were forced to get your message out in that amount of time. And it was fun as a presenter to be able to do that. And, kind of a challenge. And I had to make it really visually appealing, but break up the content and give yourself breaks, because you're competing against really strange things. Dogs, doorbells, you can go to the bathroom at any time you want to go, so like you just turn your camera off, your mic, and run in. And so you're competing against all of these really funny things. And so just keep that in mind. And a colleague of mine uses the hammock effect, where you kind of start really high and you kind of slump down in the middle, and then you got to end high too, but you got to have pokes in the middle to keep them engaged. So I think the key there is doing that is just breaking up the content.
I think I would add for sure that break up the people, so that if you can create a way for people to kind of break off and then come back. I know there's been a lot of innovations happening in that space too. But I think also if you can create a way for people to communicate offline and interact with you while you're in presentation. So it really is phenomenal to see people, light up their emojis as people are presenting. And it's not only encouraging for the presenter who can see it, but it kind of lets people know that other people are there. So I think that is something to kind of keep things popping as an event is going on and streaming live.
We call it the second screen app, where you have, you're pushing out content on your mobile phone, or you're having people polling, or you're constantly sending something out every 5 to 10 minutes just to make sure they're engaged.
Mhm. We've got another question that came in specifically for Sam. Can you tell us a little bit more about your company and how SnapBar has helped planners with virtual events? Sam, you're on mute, Sam.
You.
My bad.
We've all heard that about 1,000 times in this last 8 months, right?
No, yes, it's not my first mistake. I was going to actually just add to the last little piece of discussion that some of the examples that I've seen, both at SnapBar and Keep Your City Smiling, of ways companies, planners, producers have used engagement pieces
Mhm.
are pretty unique. So one tip would be, instead of trying to minimize distractions, acknowledge them and bring them in. The second screen example is phenomenal. And so, for example, with our virtual photo booth software, it can be on browser and on mobile. Well, when someone's tuned in right now, what we've seen people do is flash a QR code and say, scan it with your phone, so that because you're going to be on your phone already, maybe you're taking a selfie that's going to be branded content while you're listening. The same thing for boxes, and we're not the only company that does it, but any company that can ship out like cool care packages, do
Mhm.
group opening moments. That's really
Mhm.
fun. It's just like, oh, look, this is exciting. And random little tidbits will come out like, oh, I love this chocolate, and a story related to my tour of Theo in Seattle 6 months ago, or something like that. We've seen people too. Oh, and so when it comes to like acknowledging distractions, I've never seen more pets in photos before. Because our pets are everywhere, and people
Yeah.
are listening to a conference, and these are professional conferences, and people are dressed up, but then their dog, their cat, their kids, their friend are popping in for some version of the experience. That's not a bad thing. You can't minimize the doorbells, the distractions, the people
Yeah.
walking in the background. So instead of saying, "Oh, please leave me alone, I'm busy," bring them in any way possible. Let them see what you do. Those are like some examples that we've seen, like engagement pieces work really well. And we're
Mhm.
leaning into it again, where make it fun, make it silly. We're getting a lot of requests for like Halloween photo booths and holiday party photo booths, literally some for the kids of the employees of the companies. So instead of
Mhm.
just planning a party for the mom, the dad, or whoever, it's actually like for the people that have had to deal with them beyond hours and hours of calls. It's just a fun thing
Yeah.
because I don't know, maybe Halloween will be canceled in a lot of places, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you've hit it too, that it's really a desire for moments of joy. We are spending
Yep.
so much time on our computers. It's sometimes 10 or 12 hours a day. It's, meetings to meetings where there really isn't that break. We used to be able to, have the water cooler talk maybe, or at a conference where you're, in between sessions. And it's really, how do you bring that into this realm? And the events that we've planned virtually, the biggest successes have been with having those just moments of joy, whether it's the game shows, the trivia,
Hmm.
pumpkin carving contest, and people are submitting images. Sam, I think you've hit it there with pets. People love to show their pets, and the pets are part of the company now, really, anyway. And so it really
Hmm.
is, how do we bring those moments of joy in these down times.
Yep. Giving people a
So
reason to smile is incredibly important
yeah.
in any way, shape, or form that it can be done. And so moments of levity are
Mhm.
important. And again, I can't encourage people enough. Granted, and by the way, like, yeah, we're not the only producers of this kind of stuff. Yeah, there we go.
There we
That's
I
great.
have
go.
included my kids. I've taken pictures of my kids. I've let my kids look at the various trivia pieces that as they're tuning in on the side outside of camera and whatnot. And it's all, yeah, I think it's really cool. I think more and more the people that I've been meeting at the virtual conference as I've been attending and speaking at, I feel more connected in an authentic way to people, as weird as this sounds, than when we're
Mhm.
all in our perfectly pressed suits or jackets or whatever, sitting at a fancy restaurant at some big event center and having business conversations. Um, there's a place for that, and that's not bad. But it's been really cool to connect with other CEOs of companies, and both of us have our kids on our laps or our cats crawling over us. and it just lets us talk about things that we never would have connected on before. And I have felt deeper connection with those people as a result.
Well, I
Yeah.
I'm
also
with
think
you.
this media has it's broken down barriers. So people who might be introverts in person feel much more comfortable with a screen between you. So you're going to get better content out of guests sometimes, and you might, somebody who might not speak up in a live show is much more willing to speak on a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is such an excellent point. That this venue allows a lot more accessibility, right? That there's great translation software that AI that's embedded in some of these platforms that with closed caption, you're able to create less challenge with people being able to really interact with the content. There's
Mm-hmm.
There's also sort of that great other types of expression that come in through chats, expressed through emojis and gifs and other things. And then, when, in this environment, you have a chance to actually look a little bit more behind the screen with the people who are talking, right? Like how many people right now are looking up LinkedIn right now for the people who are presenting right now, or, looking up the people who are talking and learning a little bit more about you can look on Facebook, you can look on other platforms to see the things that they're speaking to. So there's a little bit more of that that's all brought into this environment than we've typically seen.
Mm-hmm. We did have another question come in. Have you had any experiences with ordering food delivered simultaneously to each person attending your virtual event or meeting?
Yes, we do it all the time. I
Oh.
think we just did it last night for a gala. So usually it's for VIPs, or we'll offer 2 levels of service. So there'll be a $200 box versus and catering companies here jumped on board very quickly and have gotten up to speed and understand the delivery process. So sometimes people will pick it up from a location, and sometimes it'll be delivered, but it works beautifully, and people are tweeting out pictures of their dinners, and it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I've loved that. I've loved it when people have tweeted or posted inside of the event. Oh, look what I just received. We leverage things like meal services, DoorDash. Just give people an account and they can order. And we usually ask that they have it delivered to them in time for an event, and then post what they got. So it just adds more content and more interaction, and then more transparency for the people that are participating.
I heard about a fun business meeting where 2 people called and ordered a pizza at the same time and had it saw how long it took to get there, and then they shared their pizza over lunch, which I thought was a cute idea.
Yeah, I've seen a
That
lot
is a
of like
cute idea.
virtual movie watching and whatnot too, where I think Netflix even had a tool that you could, simultaneously watch with your friend.
Oh,
So there's
fun.
been a lot of innovation and creativity, of course, and we're just about out of time. I wanted to end, kind of bring this back together with any examples of how you've kept morale up or encouragement or any sort of positive ending words here as we go around the horn.
I'll start us
This
off
too
and just
shall
say
pass.
I just think there are not many times in your life you get a chance to redo everything you just did. So we have to look at this positively and say we're just going to erase the last 10 years with most of our businesses. And we have all the knowledge that we gained in those 10 years. So look at it as a gift and really try to take advantage. These are my last words. Please go to liveeventscoalition.org and please join us, because we are much stronger together. And we really need all the voices to come together so that we can all rise as an industry.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lynn.
I'll just add. Sorry.
Go ahead, Karen.
No, I don't think I could say anything better than Lynn. Reach out to the people that are close to you and support other people in the events industry.
Yeah.
So I'll just add that I think that really leverage the fact that this is allowing more inclusion. And so how can we continue to build on that? This is creating more accessibility. This is creating more inclusion. The way that you can sort of create more of those types of experience that build on the power of that, that is, I think, going to be a great differentiator for those of us who are sort of in that mode of trying constantly creating community. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more access and more ability for us to bring more people into these experiences, live and digital.
Absolutely. Marcus?
Yeah, I'd like to end by saying lean in and get uncomfortable. That's where we learn. If you're uncomfortable, it means you're doing something new. And if there's any time to do something new, none of us have been in a pandemic before. None of us have faced what we're facing before. None of us thought that we would be online all the time as we are. So just get uncomfortable, try new things. Mistakes happen and you learn from them. So it's okay, like drop that. Any shroud of trying to be perfect is A, it's totally boring. B, you're going to learn something new by not being perfect, by making those stumbles, and just lean in.
Well, thank you so much. A huge thank you and heartfelt thank you to our panelists, Marcus, Sam, Karen, and Lynn, for this great uplifting conversation about where we're going and how we are going to continue to rise up. We are going to get through it. A big thank you to our sponsors. Please do not forget to donate. And also, you can join the Northwest Event Show in the upcoming session taking place November 19th. Thank you again. Happy Wednesday, and please be safe and be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.